My Chinese girlfriend's parents spent 2 years calling me the N-word in Mandarin, pouring boiling soup on me, and trying to delete my bar exam registration because they thought I couldn't understand them. At our wedding, I gave a toast in perfect Mandarin and told everyone what they'd been saying, then announced my father's special gift was coming for them. I had never told Kim I was fluent in Mandarin, and the day I met her parents, I planned to surprise everyone by giving a toast at dinner in their language. But then her mom saw me and literally gasped, "He's black," she called out to her husband in Mandarin. Then she turned to Kim, "Why are you like this?" Then she turned to me with a perfect smile. That was when I decided to keep my secret and see what her parents really thought of me. And unfortunately, that was just the start. During that entire dinner, they kept trying to convince Kim to break up with me, insulting my skin color, tell Kim my kind, cheated on women all the time. I just nodded politely and thanked them for being so welcoming. I decided to keep my knowledge of Mandarin a complete secret going forward, but things escalated when Kim and I got serious. During a family photo at her cousin's wedding, her mom positioned herself next to me and deliberately ground her stiletto heel into my foot. She kept pressing down tell Kim, her sister, in Mandarin that black men were angry, and I'd most likely lash out at her, and now Kim would see who I really am. But I just kept Smy Kim G for the photo. There were a few other instances like that here and there, but when me and Kim got engaged, her parents got really desperate. Her mom insisted on doing the dishes after dinner one night, and because I'd left my phone on the kitchen counter and Kim was in the bathroom, she dropped my phone in the sink full of soapy water. At a summer barbecue, her dad offered me an imported beer to celebrate something at his work. They discussed in Mandarin how the sleeping pills he put should knock me out within 20 minutes. I still don't know why they wanted me asleep, but I just pretended to take a sip and thanked him, then walked around the corner and spit it all out. Just as I thought her parents couldn't get any worse, during Kim's grandmother's birthday, I was helping serve soup when her dad whispered to the mom in Mandarin that the soup was extremely hot. On cue, her mom immediately turned and tripped, pouring the entire pot of boy Kim's soup down my back. The pain was unbearable, and my shirt melted into my skin. I dropped to the floor and started shaking, and almost like practiced, her mom began crying fake tears and apologizing. She called an ambulance for me, then 4 days later mailed the hospital bill to mine and Kim's house. When I reached the date of my bar exam, things reached the point of no return. Kim's parents knew I'd been studying for 3 years, and the night before the test, they used Kim's laptop to delete my exam registration. They sat on the couch discussing in Mandarin how 3 years of law school would be wasted, and surely Kim would leave me then. I found out at 3 a.m. and spent 4 hours on the phone getting emergency re-registration. Her parents texted a lie to Kim that morning saying they saw me at a bar instead of the exam. The final straw came the week before our wedding. At a restaurant while Kim was in the bathroom, I heard them discussing paying a woman $50,000 to interrupt our ceremony and claim I assaulted her. Her mom showed her dad photos of the actress and fake bruise makeup they'd use. They toasted with their wine glasses to finally solving their problem. On our wedding day at the final family breakfast, they confirmed the woman was in position and reviewed the exact timing. They showed each other photos and talked about how innocent she looked and how everyone would believe her. They smiled at me and asked if I was ready for my big day. Well, that's when I decided to drop the bomb. I'd been literally waiting for this moment for years. Ever since I first learned how much they hated me, I'd been planning my revenge. And so, before the ceremony started, I asked all the guests to gather around because I had an announcement to make. Kim's parents looked confused but came closer. I kinked my glass, looked them right in their eyes, and began speaking in perfect Mandarin. I stared right at them and watched the blood completely drain from their faces. Her mother looked like how I assume Moses looked when that bush started talking to him. Her dad went pale and stared at me like I'd grown 5 heads. I saw them start to literally cower. I began my speech by thanking them for 2 wonderful years of welcoming me into their family. I told everyone how for my entire relationship with my beautiful wife, I had understood her parents' words, just never told them, because I felt blessed being able to hear their true thoughts about me, because they thought I couldn't understand them. I then stared right at them. They were practically begging me not to go on, but I did. I started to praise their constant warmth and acceptance. I specifically thanked her mother for being so careful with my belongings, and her father for always looking out for my safety. I mentioned how touched I was by their enthusiasm for our wedding. The crowd erupted in applause, but I silenced everyone. Tell Kim them. I have one more announcement to make. I said that my father had called that morning with news. To celebrate mine and Kim's wedding, he had gifted us an estate from his portfolio, meaning Kim and I now have a house of our own, but even better than that. He left something else too, something specifically for Kim's parents. I announced that I had told him all about them and how they treated me all throughout my relationship, and he wanted to personally thank them with a surprise gift that should be arriving at some point throughout the wedding. The crowd erupted again. The parents looked at me with horror. I swear I saw the mom actually start to pee herself in fear. She was so scared that her fingers started twitching, meaning that benign fasciculation syndrome, her neuromuscular disease that had been gone for 3 years, flared up. After all the congratulations were over, her dad walked up to me shaking. "Outside now, we have to talk." I followed him outside, my heart pounding but my face calm. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Kim's father led me away from the wedding venue. His hands trembled as he turned to face me, and I could see the sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I watched him struggle to find words, his usual confidence completely shattered. Behind us, I heard the wedding guests beginning to filter back inside, their excited chatter about my announcement still echoing in the air. Kim's mother appeared at the doorway, her face ashen. She stumbled slightly as she hurried toward us, her heels clicking frantically on the pavement. The twitching in her fingers had spread to her entire hand now, and she kept flexing and clenching her fist as if trying to regain control. Her father finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. He asked me what I wanted, what it would take to make this all go away. His eyes darted between me and the venue entrance, clearly terrified of what might happen next. I maintained my composure, letting the silence stretch between us. Inside, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. These were the people who were supposed to become my family, who should have welcomed me with open arms. Instead, they had spent years trying to destroy my relationship with their daughter. Kim's mother reached us, grabbing her her husband's arm for support. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, and I noticed her other hand clutching at her chest. For a moment, I wondered if she might actually faint right there in the parking lot. They both stared at me, waiting for my response. I could see the calculations running through their minds, trying to figure out exactly how much I knew, what I might have recorded, what evidence I might have gathered over the years. The fear in their eyes was palpable. I took a deep breath and straightened my tie. The wedding would start in less than an hour, and I had no intention of being late to my own ceremony. But first, I needed to make something very clear to these people who had tormented me for so long. I told them that what I wanted was simple. I wanted them to understand that their daughter had chosen me, and that their attempts to break us apart had failed. I wanted them to know that every scheme, every cruel act, every whispered insult had only made me more determined to build a life with Kim. Her mother's legs seemed to give out slightly, and her father had to steady her. The twitching in her hand had become more pronounced, her fingers moving involuntarily in rapid spasms. I remembered her mentioning that stress could trigger her condition, and it seemed the morning's revelations had pushed her body past its limits. I continued, explaining that my father's gift wasn't what they feared. There would be no lawsuit, no public humiliation, no revenge in the traditional sense. Instead, I had chosen a different path, one that would hopefully lead to something better for all of us. Her father's expression shifted from fear to confusion. He asked what I meant, his voice still shaky but gaining some strength. Behind him, I saw Kim's cousin peek out from the venue, clearly curious about what was happening but too polite to interrupt. I explained that the gift was exactly what I had announced, a house for Kim and me to start our married life. But there was more to it than that. My father had also set up a trust fund, one that would provide for any future grandchildren. The catch was that it required regular family gatherings, documented interactions between all grandparents and the children. Kim's mother made a strangled sound, somewhere between a sob and a gasp. Her husband's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: relief, confusion, and then something that might have been shame. I told them that I believed in second chances, in the possibility of change. I had seen how much Kim loved them despite everything, how she made excuses for their behavior, how she tried to bridge the gap between us. I wonder what's really going through the narrator's mind right now, keeping quiet for years while they treated him so badly. There's something curious about his choice to wait this long, to let all these terrible things happen without saying a word. For her sake, I was willing to try, but I also made it clear that things would be different going forward. There would be no more secrets, no more schemes, no more attempts to undermine our marriage. I spoke in Mandarin, ensuring they understood every word, every nuance of what I was saying. Her father nodded slowly, his shoulders sagging as if a great weight had been lifted. Her mother was crying now, real tears this time, not the fake ones she had perfected over the years. The twitching in her hand had spread to her arm, and she seemed to be having trouble controlling her movements. I suggested she sit down, gesturing to a nearby bench. As her husband helped her over to it, I noticed several wedding guests watching from the windows. Kim would be wondering where I was, probably worried that something had gone wrong at the last minute. Her parents sat on the bench, looking older and more fragile than I had ever seen them. For the first time since I'd met them, they seemed genuinely vulnerable, stripped of the armor of superiority they had worn for so long. I told them about the actress they had hired, mentioning that I had already spoken to her that morning. She had been confused but cooperative when I explained the situation, especially after I offered to pay her the same amount to simply leave. She was probably halfway back to the city by now. Kim's mother looked up at me, her tear-stained face a mask of disbelief. She asked how long I had known, how many of their conversations I had understood. Her voice was small, almost childlike, completely different from the confident woman who had tormented me for years. I admitted that I had understood everything from that very first dinner. Every insult, every plan, every cruel comment had been crystal clear to me, but I had chosen to wait, to gather evidence, to protect Kim from the truth until I had no other choice. Her father asked why I hadn't told Kim immediately. It was a fair question, one I had asked myself many times over the years. I explained that I had wanted to shield her from the pain of knowing how her parents really felt, hoping that maybe they would come around on their own. But as their schemes escalated, as they became more desperate and dangerous, I realized that keeping the secret was no longer protecting Kim. It was enabling her parents' behavior. The incident with the boiling soup had been a turning point. That could have caused permanent damage, could have scarred me for life. Kim's mother flinched at the mention of the soup, her hand going unconsciously to her throat. The twitching had spread to her shoulder now, and I wondered if we should call a doctor. But she waved off my concern, insisting she would be fine once the stress passed. I checked my watch. The ceremony would begin in 40 minutes, and I still needed to check on Kim, make sure she wasn't worried about my absence. But I couldn't leave things unfinished with her parents, not when we were so close to a resolution. I told them about the recordings I had made, the evidence I had collected over the years, not to threaten them, but to explain why I had felt the need to protect myself. Every incident had been documented, every conversation preserved, just in case things escalated beyond what I could handle. Her father's face paled again, but I quickly reassured them that I had no intention of using any of it. The recordings would be destroyed after the wedding, the evidence erased. I wanted to start our married life with a clean slate, without the shadow of the past hanging over us. Kim's mother struggled to speak through her tears, her words coming out in broken Mandarin. She asked if I could ever forgive them, if there was any chance of building a real relationship after everything they had done. I thought about all the pain they had caused, all the moments they had tried to ruin, but I also thought about Kim, about the family we would build together, about the children who would one day call these people grandparents. I told them that forgiveness would take time, that trust would have to be earned, but I was willing to try if they were. The alternative was losing their daughter completely, because I would not allow them to continue their toxic behavior in our new home. Her father stood up, helping his wife to her feet. He extended his hand to me, a gesture that seemed to cost him greatly. His pride had always been his defining characteristic, and admitting defeat, accepting me as his son-in-law, went against everything he had fought for over the past 2 years. I shook his hand, noting how his grip was firm despite the trembling. His wife attempted to compose herself, wiping at her tears with a handkerchief. The twitching had subsided slightly, though her movements were still jerky and uncoordinated. We walked back toward the venue together, an awkward trio bound by secrets and tentative hope. The wedding guests had mostly returned in inside, though I caught glimpses of curious faces at the windows. Everyone would be wondering what had transpired during our private conversation. As we reached the entrance, Kim appeared in the doorway. She looked radiant in her wedding dress, though concern creased her features. She rushed toward me, asking if everything was all right, if there was some problem with the ceremony. I assured her that everything was perfect, that I had just been having an important conversation with her parents. She looked between us, clearly sensing the strange energy, but unsure what to make of it. Her mother reached out tentatively, touching Kim's arm in a gesture that seemed almost foreign after years of manipulation. Kim's father cleared his throat, announcing that he had something to say. In halting English, he told his daughter that he was happy for her, that he approved of her choice of husband. The words seemed to physically pain him, but he forced them out nonetheless. Kim's eyes widened in shock. In all the years I had known her, she had never heard her father express approval of our relationship. She turned to her mother, who nodded through fresh tears, adding her own blessing to the marriage. I watched as Kim processed this sudden shift, her face cycling through confusion, suspicion, and finally, a cautious hope. She had wanted her parents' acceptance for so long, had made so many excuses for their behavior. Now, faced with what seemed like genuine approval, she didn't quite know how to respond. The wedding coordinator appeared, politely reminding us that the ceremony was scheduled to begin in 15 minutes. Kim needed to return to the bridal suite for final touches, and I needed to take my place at the altar. The moment of reconciliation would have to wait. As Kim hugged her parents, I caught her father's eye over her shoulder. The look he gave me was complex, resentment mixed with resignation, fear tempered by something that might have been respect. We both knew this was just the beginning of a long journey. Kim's mother whispered something in her daughter's ear, something in Mandarin that made Kim pull back in surprise. For a moment, I worried she had revealed something about their schemes, but then Kim smiled and hugged her mother tighter. We separated then, Kim returning to her bridesmaids while I headed for the altar. Her parents took their seats in the front row, looking subdued but present. As I walked past them, her mother reached out and touched my sleeve, mouthing 2 words in Mandarin that I had never expected to hear from her. The ceremony space was beautiful, decorated with white roses and soft lighting. My groomsmen were already in position, and the officiant gave me a reassuring nod as I took my place. In just a few minutes, I would marry the woman I loved, with her parents' blessing finally secured. But I knew the real work would begin after the honeymoon. Building a relationship with Kim's parents would take time, patience, and probably more forgiveness than I currently possessed. There would be setbacks, moments of regression, times when old patterns threatened to resurface. Still, as the music began and the wedding party started their procession, I felt hopeful. The secret that had defined our relationship for 2 years was finally in the open. The power dynamic had shifted, the games had ended, and we could finally begin to build something real. The church doors opened, and Kim appeared on her father's arm. She was breathtaking, her smile bright enough to light up the entire room. As they began their walk down the aisle, I noticed her father's jaw was set with determination, as if walking his daughter to me was the hardest thing he had ever done. When they reached the altar, the traditional question was asked about who gave this woman to be married. Her father's voice was clear and strong as he responded, placing Kim's hand in mine with a gravity that suggested he understood the significance of the gesture. As Kim and I faced each other, ready to exchange vows, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The secrets, the schemes, the moments of doubt and pain. All of it had led to this moment. And while I couldn't forget what her parents had done, I could choose to move forward. The officiant began the ceremony, and I lost myself in Kim's eyes. Whatever challenges lay ahead with her family, we would face them together. The gift my father had promised would arrive soon, cementing our independence while also creating opportunities for reconciliation. As we exchanged rings and promised to love each other through better and worse, I caught a glimpse of Kim's mother in the front row. The twitching had finally stopped, and she was watching us with what looked like genuine emotion. Perhaps there was hope for us all yet. The ceremony continued, each word bringing us closer to the moment when we would be pronounced husband and wife. And in that moment, surrounded by friends and family, with secrets revealed and new beginnings possible, I felt ready for whatever came next. The handshake that probably felt like signing a peace treaty after a 2-year war. Nothing says, welcome to the family, quite like reluctant acceptance and visible trembling, does it? The ceremony concluded with thunderous applause as we kissed, officially becoming husband and wife. Kim's parents remained seated, their faces carefully composed, but their body language revealing their inner turmoil. Her mother's hands gripped her purse so tightly, her knuckles had turned white, while her father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. During the reception setup, I noticed Kim's parents huddled in a corner, speaking rapidly in Mandarin. They discussed damage control, wondering aloud what evidence I might have collected over the years. Her mother suggested they leave immediately after dinner, but her father reminded her how suspicious that would look. They agreed to maintain appearances while figuring out their next move. The reception began smoothly enough. Kim and I shared our first dance, her face glowing with happiness. She kept glancing at her parents, still processing their apparent change of heart. I held her close, knowing the evening held more surprises. As we made our rounds greeting guests, Kim's aunt approached us. She congratulated us warmly, then mentioned in Mandarin to Kim's mother how wonderful it was that they had finally accepted me. Kim's mother forced a smile and agreed, but I caught her shooting daggers at me when she thought no one was looking. During dinner, Kim's parents sat at the family table, picking at their food. They continued their hushed conversation in Mandarin, debating whether I had actually recorded their conversations. Her father suggested I was bluffing, but her mother reminded him about the actress who had mysteriously disappeared. They both glanced nervously at the entrance, as if expecting my father's promised gift to materialize at any moment. Kim's cousin Nicholas, who had always been friendly to me, raised a toast to our happiness. He mentioned how glad he was that the family was finally united. Kim's parents lifted their glasses mechanically, their smiles not reaching their eyes. Between courses, Kim excused herself to touch up her makeup. Her mother immediately followed, and through the bathroom door, I heard her speaking urgently in Mandarin. She told Kim that while they had given their blessing, they still had concerns about our future. She planted seeds of doubt, mentioning how difficult interracial marriages could be, how cultural differences might strain our relationship over time. Kim emerged looking troubled, but brightened when she saw me waiting. Her mother followed, giving me a look that could have frozen water. The contrast between her public public facade and private hostility was stark. As the evening progressed, Kim's parents grew increasingly agitated about the promised gift. They kept checking their phones, whispering theories about what my father might have planned. Her mother suggested it might be a private investigator's report, while her father worried it could be something more public and humiliating. During the cake cutting, Kim's father approached me under the pretense of congratulating us again. In Mandarin, he offered me $20,000 to forget everything and start fresh. He promised they would never interfere again if I would just let the past go and cancel whatever my father had planned. I smiled and thanked him in English for his kind words, ignoring his offer entirely. His face flushed with frustration, but he maintained his composure as photographers captured the moment. Kim noticed her parents' strange behavior throughout the reception. She asked me several times if something was wrong, mentioning how jumpy they seemed. I assured her everything was fine, that they were probably just emotional about their daughter getting married. As the night wore on, Kim's parents became more desperate. During a quiet moment, her mother cornered me near the gift table. She spoke rapidly in Mandarin, offering to publicly apologize, to tell Kim everything themselves if I would just call off whatever was coming. The fear in her eyes was genuine now. I responded in English, thanking her for the lovely wedding gift they had given us, gesturing to an envelope on the table. She looked confused, as they hadn't given us anything yet. The uncertainty was clearly eating at her. Kim's grandmother, who had been watching the interactions all evening, pulled me aside. In broken English, she told me she was happy Kim had found someone who truly loved her. Then, switching to Mandarin, she added that she had long suspected her son and daughter-in-law were not as welcoming as they pretended to be. She patted my hand knowingly before returning to her table. The wedding coordinator announced it was time for the parent dances. Kim danced with her father first, and I watched as he struggled to maintain his composure. His movements were stiff, mechanical, and he kept glancing at me over Kim's shoulder. When it was time for me to dance with Kim's mother, she could barely look at me. We moved awkwardly around the floor, her hand trembling in mine. In Mandarin, she whispered that she knew I was recording everything, even now. I simply smiled and complimented her on raising such a wonderful daughter, speaking in English loud enough for nearby guests to hear. After the dances, Kim's parents retreated to their table, looking haggard. They had aged years in just a few hours. Her mother's carefully styled hair was beginning to fall, and her father had loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Kim's best friend Alexandra gave a touching speech about our relationship, mentioning how she had watched us overcome obstacles and grow stronger together. Kim's parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats, probably wondering if Alexandra knew more than she was letting on. As the evening continued, I noticed Kim's parents had stopped discussing their plans in Mandarin altogether. They sat in paranoid silence, jumping every time someone approached their table. Her mother kept checking the entrance, while her father nervously tapped his fingers on the table. During a brief respite, Kim pulled me aside. She mentioned that her parents were acting strange, asking if I had said something to upset them. I told her we had simply discussed our future as a family, which was technically true. She seemed satisfied, but still concerned. The band announced the last dance of the evening, and Kim's parents looked simultaneously relieved and terrified. They clearly wanted the night to end, but feared what might happen when it did. As Kim and I took the floor, I saw them whispering urgently again, making what seemed like final, desperate plans. After the dance, as guests began to leave, Kim's father made one last attempt. He pulled me aside, and abandoning all pretense, spoke in rapid Mandarin. He admitted to everything, the schemes, the attempts to break us up, even the actress they had hired. He begged me to consider Kim's feelings, how devastated she would be to learn the truth about her parents. I listened quietly, then responded in English that Kim deserved parents who loved and accepted her choices. He deflated, realizing his emotional manipulation wouldn't work. As we prepared to leave for our honeymoon suite, Kim's parents approached us together. They looked defeated, exhausted, and genuinely frightened. Her mother hugged Kim tightly, whispering something in her ear that made Kim look confused. Her father shook my hand, his grip weak and clammy. We made our way through the remaining guests, accepting final congratulations. Kim's parents stood frozen by their table, watching us leave. The fear of what might await them at home was written clearly on their faces. In the car to the hotel, Kim was quiet. She held my hand tightly, processing the emotional whirlwind of the day. She mentioned again how strange her parents had acted, how different they seemed from their usual selves. I squeezed her hand reassuringly, knowing that our real journey was just beginning. At the hotel, Kim wanted to talk about her parents' behavior. She couldn't understand their sudden acceptance after years of resistance, or their nervous energy throughout the reception. I suggested that weddings were emotional times, that perhaps they were simply coming to terms with their daughter being married. She wasn't entirely convinced, but was too happy and exhausted to dwell on it. As she got ready for bed, she mentioned that her mother had whispered something odd during their final hug, something about being sorry and hoping Kim could forgive them someday. The next morning, Kim's phone rang early. It was her mother, speaking in a strained voice. She asked if we had heard from my father yet about the gift. Kim, confused, handed me the phone. I told her mother we were about to leave for our honeymoon and would handle any deliveries when we returned. The relief in her voice was palpable, though she tried to hide it. She wished us a wonderful trip, her tone forcedly cheerful. After I hung up, Kim asked what that was about. I explained that my father had indeed sent a wedding gift that would be delivered to our new house. Throughout our honeymoon week in Hawaii, Kim's parents called daily. They claimed they just wanted to check on us, but I could hear the underlying anxiety in their voices. They asked repeatedly about our return date, whether we had heard from my father, if any packages had arrived at our house. Kim found their sudden attentiveness sweet, but puzzling. They had never shown such interest in her life before. She mentioned to me several times that something felt off, that her parents seemed almost scared of something. On our fourth day, while Kim was swimming, I checked my phone to find several missed calls from her father. His voicemail, left in Mandarin, was panicked. He said neighbors had told him a delivery truck had been seen at our new house. He begged me to call him back, to tell him what was in the delivery. I didn't return his call. Instead, I joined Kim in the ocean, enjoying our time together without the shadow of her parents' schemes hanging over us. Something feels really off about how desperate Kim's parents have become. They're literally offering money and begging for forgiveness. Her dad confessed to hiring an actress, but we still don't know why they suddenly changed their minds at the wedding, or what this mysterious gift is that has them so terrified. terrified. For the first time in our relationship, I felt truly free. That evening, Kim video called her parents to show them the sunset. They looked terrible. Bags under their eyes, her mother's usually perfect appearance disheveled. They tried to act normal, but their smiles were strained. When Kim asked if they were feeling all right, they claimed it was just stress from the wedding. Her father managed to ask, seemingly casually, if we had been in contact with anyone back home. Kim mentioned we were enjoying being unplugged, and I saw him deflate slightly. The not knowing was clearly eating them alive. On our last day in Hawaii, Kim suggested we should do something nice for her parents when we returned. She said they seemed to have really turned a corner, accepting our marriage. I agreed, knowing that the real test would come when we were all back in the same city. The flight home was peaceful, with Kim dozing on my shoulder. She had no idea that her parents had spent the entire week in torment, waiting for the other shoe to drop. They had created their own prison of fear and paranoia, trapped by their guilt and my silence. As we landed, Kim's phone immediately filled with messages from her parents. They offered to pick us up from the airport, to help us get settled into the new house, to bring us dinner. Their desperation to see us, or rather, to find out what awaited them, was obvious. Kim was touched by their offers, but insisted we needed time to settle in first. We took a cab to our new house, a beautiful colonial in a quiet neighborhood. It was perfect for starting our life together, far enough from her parents to maintain healthy boundaries, but close enough for regular visits. As we pulled up to the house, I noticed a large package on the front porch. Kim excitedly wondered if it was a wedding gift. I knew her parents had probably been staring at that package all week, too terrified to investigate, but unable to stop thinking about it. Inside, we found several more packages and cards from wedding guests. Kim wanted to open everything immediately, but I suggested we unpack first. As she headed upstairs with our luggage, I quickly moved the large package from my father to the study, wanting to control when and how that particular revelation occurred. That evening, Kim's parents called again. Her mother's voice was shaky as she asked about our flight, our new house, whether we needed anything. In the background, I could hear her father prompting her in Mandarin, telling her to ask about deliveries, packages, anything unusual. Kim invited them over for dinner the following weekend, wanting to show them our new home. After she hung up, she laughed about how eager they seemed, joking that marriage had somehow made them more attentive parents. As we settled into bed in our new home, Kim curled against me contentedly. She had no idea that her parents were probably lying awake, tormented by possibilities. They had spent years tormenting me, and now their own imaginations were doing the work for me. The next few days passed peacefully as we settled into married life. Kim returned to work, excited to share honeymoon photos with colleagues. Her parents texted constantly, offering help with house setup, sending links to furniture stores, suggesting family dinners. Their transformation would have been touching if I hadn't known the fear driving it. They were desperate to get back in our good graces, to somehow neutralize whatever threat they believed was coming. On Thursday evening, Kim mentioned she had run into her cousin Nicholas at lunch. He had seemed surprised by her parents' behavior at the wedding, mentioning they had seemed terrified of something. Kim brushed it off, but I could see her starting to piece together the puzzle. That night, I found her looking through wedding photos on her laptop. She paused at one showing her parents during my announcement, zooming in on their faces. The shock and fear were clearly visible, even in the professional photographer's shots. She asked me again about my conversation with them, what exactly had been said. I told her we had discussed our future as a family, the importance of mutual respect and acceptance. All true, though not the complete truth. Friday arrived with Kim excited about her parents' visit the next day. She spent the evening preparing, wanting everything to be perfect. As she cooked, she mentioned that her mother had called 3 times that day, asking what she could bring, what time they should arrive, whether anyone else would be there. I helped with preparations, all while knowing that tomorrow would bring another confrontation. The gift from my father remained unopened in the study, waiting for the right moment. That night, Kim's parents called one final time. Her father got on the phone, and in barely concealed desperation, asked in Mandarin if I would speak with him privately. Kim handed me the phone, curious about what he wanted. I took the call in another room, listening as he made one final plea. He offered $50,000, a public apology, whatever I wanted. He just needed to know what was coming, what my father had sent, what their punishment would be. I responded in English, loud enough for Kim to hear, that we looked forward to seeing them tomorrow, and that I had a surprise to share with the whole family. His strangled sound of panic was audible even from where Kim stood. After I hung up, Kim asked what the surprise was. I told her she would find out tomorrow, along with everyone else. She was intrigued, but trusted me enough not to push further. As we prepared for bed, Kim mentioned she was nervous about the dinner, not because of any specific concern, but something in her parents' voices all week had unsettled her. Their desperation to visit, their constant checking in, it didn't match the parents she had known all her life. I held her close, assuring her that tomorrow would bring clarity. She had no idea how much clarity it would actually bring, or how much her world was about to shift. The stage was set for the final act. Kim's parents would arrive tomorrow, expecting judgment, punishment, some form of retribution. They had spent a week in self-imposed torture, their own guilty consciences creating scenarios far worse than anything I could have planned. The truth was about to come out, but not in the way they expected. My father's gift would indeed play a role, but the real gift would be something else entirely, the chance for a new beginning, if they were brave enough to take it. As Kim drifted off to sleep, I lay awake thinking about the journey that had brought us here, from that first dinner where I had discovered their true feelings, through all their schemes and cruelty, to this moment of possibility. Tomorrow would determine whether Kim's parents could truly change, whether they could move past their prejudice and accept me as family. The power dynamic had shifted completely. They were now the ones keeping secrets, the ones afraid of exposure. But I had meant what I said at the wedding. I believed in second chances, in the possibility of redemption. Tomorrow would test that belief and determine the shape of our family's future. The middle section was drawing to a close, with all the pieces in place for the final confrontation. Kim's parents had spent a week in fearful anticipation, their imagination running wild with possibilities. Kim herself was beginning to sense that something significant had happened, though she didn't yet understand what. The promised gift from my father remained unopened, a looming presence that had haunted Kim's parents throughout our honeymoon. Their desperate attempts to discover its contents, their increasing panic, and their sudden transformation into attentive parents all pointed to their guilty consciences. As Saturday morning dawned, I knew that by evening, all secrets would be revealed. The elaborate game of cat and mouse would end, and we would discover whether Kim's parents could truly accept me as their son-in-law or whether their prejudice ran too deep to overcome. The final act would bring resolution, one way or another, but that resolution would come through truth and honesty, not through revenge or cruelty. Despite everything they had done, they were still Kim's parents, and any future we built would have to include them in some capacity. Saturday morning arrived with Kim bustling around the kitchen, preparing for her parents' visit. I watched her arrange flowers on the dining table, completely unaware that this dinner would change everything. Her movements were precise, almost nervous, as she double-checked every detail. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Kim's parents stood on our porch, her mother clutching a bottle of wine like a lifeline, her father's hands shoved deep in his pockets. They looked like they hadn't slept properly in days. Kim welcomed them warmly, taking their coats and leading them into our living room. Her mother's eyes immediately scanned the space, searching for anything unusual. Her father sat stiffly on the couch, his gaze darting toward the study where I had stored my father's package. During the house tour, Kim's mother lingered near closed doors, clearly hoping to glimpse whatever threat she imagined lurked behind them. Her father asked casual questions about our security system, our neighbors, whether we had received many deliveries lately. Kim found their questions odd, but attributed it to parental concern. At dinner, Kim's parents barely touched their food. Her mother's hands shook slightly as she lifted her fork, and her father kept clearing his throat nervously. Kim tried to fill the silence with honeymoon stories, but her parents' responses were distracted and brief. Halfway through the meal, Kim's mother excused herself to use the bathroom. I heard her footsteps pause outside the study door, the doorknob rattling softly as she tested it. Finding it locked, she hurried back to the table, her face even paler than before. The parents showing up like they're walking into their own trial is peak irony. They built this whole scary movie in their heads, while our narrator just locked a door and let their guilt do all the work. Kim noticed the tension and asked directly if something was wrong. Her parents exchanged panicked glances before her father mumbled something about work stress. Kim's expression showed she didn't believe them, but she let it pass. After dinner, I suggested we move to the living room for dessert. Kim's parents practically jumped at the chance to leave the dining room, probably hoping for an opportunity to search other areas of the house. Her mother's eyes kept returning to me, searching for any sign of what was coming. While Kim served coffee, her father approached me near the bookshelf. In whispered Mandarin, he made one final desperate offer, their entire savings, about $40,000, if I would just end this torment. His voice cracked with desperation. I simply smiled and returned to my seat, leaving him standing there, trembling. Kim returned with the coffee, noticing her father's distressed state. She asked if he was feeling well, and he quickly sat down, assuring her he was fine. The conversation remained stilted, with Kim's parents contributing little beyond monosyllables. Her mother's nervous tics had returned, her fingers drumming against her leg in irregular patterns. Her father kept checking his watch, as if counting down to some inevitable disaster. Finally, Kim had enough. She set down her coffee cup firmly and looked at her parents. She pointed out their strange behavior all week, their nervous phone calls, their odd questions. She demanded to know what was really going on. Her parents froze, looking at each other helplessly. Her mother opened her mouth several times, but no words came out. Her father's hands clenched and unclenched in his lap. The silence stretched uncomfortably. I stood up, drawing everyone's attention. I announced that I had something to show them, something that would explain everything. Kim looked confused but curious. Her parents looked like they might bolt for the door. I retrieved the package from my father from the study. It was large but not heavy, wrapped in simple brown paper. Kim's parents watched me carry it like I was handling a bomb. Her mother's breathing became rapid and shallow. Setting the package on the coffee table, I began to unwrap it slowly. Kim's parents leaned forward despite themselves, terror and curiosity warring on their faces. Kim watched with growing concern, sensing the weight of the moment. Inside was a beautifully crafted photo album and several manila folders. Kim's mother made a strangled sound when she saw them. Her father's face had gone completely white. Kim looked between us, trying to understand their reaction. I opened the photo album first. The first page contained a picture of Kim and me from our first date, looking young and happy. The next pages showed our relationship progression, holidays, birthdays, casual moments. Kim smiled, touching the photos gently, but interspersed between these happy memories were other images. Security camera stills from the restaurant where they had hired the actress, photos of the beer bottle her father had drugged, medical photos of my back after the soup incident. Kim's smile faded as she began to understand. Her parents sat frozen as I turned each page. There were screenshots of text messages they had sent each other, planning their schemes, bank statements showing the $50,000 withdrawal, photos of the actress they had hired, including her headshots and the fake bruises they had planned to use. Kim's hands began to shake as the full scope of her parents' actions became clear. She looked at them, her face a mixture of disbelief and growing anger. Her mother started to cry, real tears this time. Her father seemed to have shrunk into himself. The manila folders contained more evidence, recordings transcribed into written documents, medical records from each incident, a timeline I had created showing every scheme, every attack, every attempt to break us apart. 2 years of careful documentation laid out in devastating detail. Kim read through everything in silence, her face growing paler with each page. Her parents didn't even try to deny it. They sat there like condemned prisoners, waiting for the executioner's axe to fall. When Kim finally looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. She turned to her parents, her voice barely a whisper as she asked them why. Why had they done this? Why had they tried so hard to destroy her happiness? Her mother broke down completely, sobbing incoherently. Her father tried to explain, stammering about cultural differences, about wanting better for their daughter, about fear and prejudice they couldn't overcome. His words sounded hollow, even to him. Kim stood abruptly, needing distance from them. She paced the room, processing years of lies and manipulation. Every family dinner, every conversation, every moment of apparent concern had been tainted by their secret hatred. I remained silent, letting Kim process this revelation. This was her moment, her choice to make. Her parents watched her pace, their faces etched with fear and regret. They had lost their daughter's trust, possibly forever. forever. Kim finally stopped pacing and faced them. Her voice was steady but cold as she told them to leave. She needed time to think, to process what they had done. Her parents stood on shaky legs, her mother reaching out tentatively before dropping her hand. At the door, her father turned back one last time. He asked in Mandarin if there was any hope for forgiveness. I translated for Kim, who simply shook her head and closed the door in their faces. We stood in our entryway, listening to their car drive away. Kim leaned against the door, tears streaming down her face. The weight of discovering her parents' true nature was crushing. Everything she thought she knew about them had been shattered. Back in the living room, she picked up the photo album again, studying each piece of evidence. She asked me to explain when each incident had happened, how I had managed to document everything without her knowing. I walked her through the timeline, watching her face crumble with each revelation. The worst part for her was realizing how many times she had defended them, how many excuses she had made for their behavior, how blind she had been to their cruelty because she couldn't imagine parents capable of such deception. As the hours passed, Kim's shock turned to anger. She called her cousin Nicholas, telling him everything. He wasn't entirely surprised, admitting he had noticed their hostility, but hadn't realized the extent. He promised to support whatever decision Kim made about her relationship with them. Kim also called Alexandra, needing her best friend's support. Alexandra came over immediately, holding Kim as she cried and raged about her parents' betrayal. The three of us sat up late into the night, processing the revelation together. By morning, Kim had made several decisions. She would cut contact with her parents temporarily, needing space to heal from their betrayal. She would also tell other family members the truth, no longer willing to protect her parents' reputation at the cost of her own well-being. The photo album and evidence would stay locked in our safe, not as blackmail, but as proof if her parents ever tried to deny or minimize what they had done. Kim needed that security, that validation, that she wasn't overreacting to their behavior. Over the following days, word spread through the family. Kim's grandmother called, unsurprised by the revelation. She had suspected for years, but had hoped she was wrong. Other relatives reached out, offering support and sharing their own observations of her parents' behavior. Kim's parents tried repeatedly to contact her. They sent flowers, letters, voicemails, begging for forgiveness. Kim deleted them all unread, not ready to hear their excuses. The power dynamic had shifted completely. They were now the ones desperately seeking acceptance. 2 weeks later, Kim decided to meet with them one final time. We chose a public restaurant, neutral ground where they couldn't make a scene. Her parents arrived looking haggard, aged by weeks of guilt and ostracism from the family. Kim laid out her terms clearly. If they wanted any relationship with her going forward, they would need to acknowledge what they had done, apologize sincerely, and commit to therapy to address their prejudices. There would be no more secrets, no more schemes, no more attempts to control her life. Her parents agreed to everything, too broken to negotiate. Her mother's hands shook as she signed the therapist's contact information into her phone. Her father's voice was hoarse as he apologized, though Kim could tell he still didn't fully understand the depth of his wrongdoing. The meeting ended with Kim telling them she would contact them when she was ready, not before. They left the restaurant like struck dogs, their previous arrogance completely shattered. The parents who had tormented me for years were gone, replaced by hollow shells. Kim threw herself into work and our marriage, slowly healing from the betrayal. She started her own therapy to process the discovery that her parents had been capable of such cruelty. Some days were harder than others, but we faced them together. My father called to check on us, having known what his gift would reveal. He offered his support, reminding me that family was about choice, not just blood. Kim had chosen me, and that was what mattered most. 3 months passed before Kim felt ready to attempt rebuilding a relationship with her parents. They had been attending therapy regularly, finally beginning to confront their prejudices. The therapist reported they were making progress, though the road would be long. Our first dinner together after the revelation was awkward, but civil. Kim's parents were different people, subdued, careful, constantly checking themselves. They spoke to me directly, making genuine efforts to know me as a person, rather than a stereotype. Kim's father trying to secretly bribe him with $40,000 right there in the living room? That's a pretty risky move with Kim just in the kitchen making coffee. I wonder if he's really that desperate or just not thinking clearly anymore about the consequences. Kim made it clear that rebuilding trust would take years, if it was even possible. Every interaction would be a test, every word scrutinized for signs of their old patterns. Her parents accepted these terms, grateful for any chance at redemption. The extended family watched carefully, judging her parents' sincerity. Some relatives remained skeptical, warning Kim to stay vigilant. Others hoped for genuine change, wanting the family to heal. The divide their actions had created would take time to mend. As our first anniversary approached, Kim reflected on how much had changed. The parents she thought she knew were gone, replaced by strangers trying to earn forgiveness. Our marriage had grown stronger through the trial, bonded by truth rather than secrets. The evidence of their schemes remained locked away, a reminder of what people were capable of when driven by prejudice. Kim sometimes looked at it, still processing the depth of their deception. But mostly, we focused on building our future together. Her parents continued therapy, slowly unpacking years of ingrained prejudice. They sent monthly letters updating Kim on their progress, respecting her boundaries about contact. Each letter showed small improvements, though Kim remained cautiously skeptical. Our home became a sanctuary of honesty after years of deception. We promised each other complete transparency, never wanting secrets to poison our relationship. The trust between us deepened, forged in the fire of her parents' betrayal. Kim's relationship with her extended family strengthened as they rallied around her. Her grandmother became a frequent visitor, offering the unconditional love Kim's parents had withheld. Cousins who had been distant grew closer, united in supporting Kim's healing. The trust fund my father had mentioned in my wedding speech became real, though modified from my initial description. Instead of requiring family gatherings, it simply ensured our financial independence from her parents. Kim appreciated the security it provided. As time passed, Kim's anger softened into sadness. She mourned the parents she thought she had, the relationship that might have been, but she also found strength in choosing her own path, refusing to let their prejudice define her life. Her parents' progress in therapy was real, but slow. They began to understand how their actions had been driven by fear and ignorance. Each session peeled back layers of prejudice, prejudice, revealing the insecurity beneath their cruelty. Kim decided to allow monthly phone calls, carefully supervised and limited in scope. Her parents were grateful for even this small connection, understanding they had forfeited any right to demand more. The calls were stilted but civil, baby steps toward possible reconciliation. Our life settled into a new rhythm, one built on truth rather than deception. The secret that had defined our relationship for 2 years was gone, replaced by open communication and mutual respect. We were finally free to build our future without shadows from the past. Kim sometimes wondered if full forgiveness was possible. Could she ever look at her parents without remembering their schemes? Could they ever truly accept me as their son-in-law? Only time would tell, but for now, small progress was enough. The photo album my father had sent became a symbol of our journey. The happy memories mixed with evidence of betrayal, showing how love and cruelty could exist side by side. Kim kept it as a reminder to never ignore red flags, to trust her instincts over family obligations. 1 year after the revelation, Kim felt ready for a family dinner. Her parents had completed 6 months of intensive therapy and showed genuine change. They arrived bearing simple gifts and sincere apologies, their old arrogance replaced by humility. The dinner was quiet but peaceful. Her parents asked about my work, showing real interest in my answers. They shared their own struggles with confronting their prejudices, acknowledging the harm they had caused. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Kim watched them carefully, looking for signs of their old patterns. But they seemed genuinely committed to change, accepting their place at the periphery of our lives rather than demanding centrality. The parents who had once schemed to control everything now accepted they controlled nothing. As they left that night, her mother hugged me tentatively. In English, not Mandarin, she thanked me for my patience and for loving her daughter. It was a small gesture, but significant. The woman who had poured boiling soup on me was trying to make amends. Kim and I talked late into the night about forgiveness and redemption. Could people truly change, or would her parents eventually revert to their old ways? We had no answers, only hope tempered by caution. The extended family gradually accepted her parents back into limited roles. Trust would never be fully restored, but civility was possible. Family gatherings became less tense, though everyone remained watchful for signs of regression. Our marriage thrived despite, or perhaps because of, the trials we had faced. We had weathered her parents' worst schemes and emerged stronger. The bond between us was unbreakable, forged in truth and tested by deception. Kim's parents continued therapy even after their required sessions ended. They joined cultural sensitivity groups, educated themselves about their prejudices, and slowly became better people. The change was real, though Kim never forgot what they had been capable of. 2 years after our wedding, Kim discovered she was pregnant. The news brought joy, but also new concerns about her parents' role in our child's life. Would they pass on their prejudices? Could they be trusted with our baby? We set clear boundaries from the start. Her parents would have supervised visits only, never alone with our child. They accepted these restrictions without complaint, understanding they had earned this mistrust. Their gratitude for any inclusion was genuine. When our daughter was born, Kim's parents met her with tears of joy and regret. They saw in her innocent face a chance for redemption, a new generation untainted by their mistakes. They promised to be better grandparents than they had been parents. Time revealed their commitment to change was genuine. They never spoke Mandarin around me to exclude me, never made cultural criticisms, never attempted to manipulate or control. The people who had tormented me for years had truly transformed. Kim slowly rebuilt a relationship with them, though it would never be what it might have been. Trust, once broken, left scars that never fully healed. But forgiveness was possible, even if forgetting was not. Our daughter grew up knowing her grandparents as flawed people working toward redemption. We taught her about prejudice and acceptance, using her grandparents' journey as a lesson in the possibility of change. She became a bridge between generations, innocent of the past, but aware of its lessons. The evidence of their schemes remained locked away, no longer needed, but never discarded. It served as a reminder of what fear and hatred could drive people to do, and the importance of standing against prejudice in all its forms. Kim's parents became advocates for acceptance in their community, sharing their story as a cautionary tale. They faced criticism from some who felt they were seeking attention, but they persisted, trying to prevent others from making their mistakes. Our family found a new equilibrium, imperfect but functional. Sunday dinners happened monthly, with boundaries respected and old patterns abandoned. Kim's parents had learned that love meant acceptance, not control. As our daughter grew, she brought joy that helped heal old wounds. Her grandparents doted on her within the limits we set, grateful for every moment. They had learned that family was a privilege, not a right, and treated it accordingly. The journey from that first dinner where I discovered their hatred to this fragile peace had been long and painful, but it had taught us all valuable lessons about truth, consequences, and the possibility of redemption. Not all stories have happy endings, but sometimes broken things can be rebuilt into something new, if not quite whole. Our life continued, shaped by the past, but not defined by it. Kim and I had built something beautiful from the ashes of her parents' prejudice, and while the scars remained, they reminded us of our strength, our love, and our commitment to truth above all else. Time kind of flew, didn't it? Thanks for letting me throw out my weird little observations. Hopefully at least a few landed. Catch you next time, whenever that ends up being.